if you have a trading system that doesn't do much to limit emissions, it won't achieve very much, period. It may achieve a small amount cost effectively, but that's not really what the world needs now. We need to achieve something at a higher level. So I think, the trading can be attractive. There are provisions in the Paris Agreement that have not been resolved yet in terms of these kind of what are sometimes called flexible mechanisms for achieving different targets. But I would say to a significant extent, those kinds of measures have been obscuring the more important point, which is about the need for a transformation that brings about zero or net zero emissions worldwide. That's what we need to stabilize the climate at any temperature. So it's, the final destination, as it were, is pretty clear where we need to go. That could be, the trading systems could be a way towards getting there, but they're just, what really matters is much more than the trading system is the cap. What matters is whether you're actually lowering emissions. That's the most important thing, I would say. Now, tariffs are really different. One of the nice things about a trading system is that price is revealed. Now, that price is reflecting the marginal cost, it's called, of reducing emissions. So it's the cost of just meeting, like the last ton that just meets the cap that was set by government, okay? So if you see a price of 30 euros, for example, it's telling you that of all the plants that were being constrained under that emissions trading system in Europe, the last ton that just meets the overall target, it costs $30, 30 euros to meet. Now, one thing that's interesting about that, when you have those prices, is this kind of an easy comparison then about what countries are doing. So if your price is higher than someone else's, kind of implies you're doing more than they are. Now, whether that's fair or unfair will depend, like beauty, on the eye of the beholder. And that's where the negotiations, where we started this, this global effort to address climate change, looking at, okay, some countries were richer than others. Some countries have more historic responsibility because they've been emitting more for a longer period of time than the developing countries. But there is a certain advantage in having that price being observable because it tells you something about sacrifice. One of the difficulties with the Paris approach is that those targets relative to base years are really difficult to compare. It's really hard to know whether one country, let's say there are two countries that are superficially kind of equal, similar GDP per capita, similar history. If they have the same kind of emission reduction targets, it doesn't actually even then mean that they're making equal sacrifices, because there are other things that would be different. Their climates are different. Their access to energy resources would be different, and so on. So even in those cases, comparison is difficult. But when you think about smaller countries, poorer countries, fast-growing, slow-growing countries, and so on, all of a sudden comparison gets much more difficult. And when you negotiate, one thing you need is for some sense about whether the different parties are making fair contributions towards meeting the collective goal. So to some extent, when you can observe these prices, it's helpful. It's a kind of indicator of the sacrifices that are being made there. And you can then see whether countries are making what you think would be an appropriate sacrifice relative to others. So that would be one advantage.